Hello, friends. Did you know that nearly 80% of those who watch my videos aren't subscribed? If you enjoy the content, I'd truly appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. It helps a lot. Also, don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. Your interaction not only supports the channel's growth, but also helps these stories reach more people. Thank you all for being here. By the way, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. My name is Carter Hayes. For the past 9 years, I've been flying search and rescue helicopters for Colorado Mountain Rescue. People say they get used to what they see in the Rocky Mountains. They're wrong. It was 4:30 in the morning when a voice came over the radio in the hangar's break room. I was drinking my third cup of coffee, watching the darkness before dawn through the window. The voice of night shift operator Kelly Morrison cut through the static with that controlled urgency I'd come to recognize over the years. "Carter, we've got an emergency call. A hiker reports an injury, coordinates coming in." I set down my cup and reached for the receiver. "What's the situation?" "Early 20s, a man, alone. He says he fell near Glacier Ridge, possibly with a broken leg. He's been there since yesterday afternoon." She paused for a moment and I heard papers rustling. "Weather conditions are borderline. Heavy fog is rolling in from the west, but we might have a 2-hour window." I glanced at the flight board. My bird, November 7-2 Foxtrot, had been pre-flighted the night before. "I'll be wheels up in 20. Send the coordinates to my GPS." "Copy that, Carter?" Her voice dropped slightly. "Be careful up there. Something about this one feels off." Kelly had been dispatching for 15 years. When she got a feeling about something, I listened. "What do you mean?" The call quality was strange. Kept cutting in and out, but not like normal cell service, and his voice? Another pause. "Just be careful." "Always am," I said, already moving toward the equipment lockers. 20 minutes later, I was strapped into the left seat of the Bell 407, running through my checks. My flight medic for the morning, Ryan Cole, climbed into the back with our rescue gear. Ryan was former Army, solid and unflappable. We'd flown together for 3 years and I trusted him completely. "Ready when you are," he said through the headset. I pulled pitch and felt the familiar lift as the skids left the concrete pad. The collective was smooth in my left hand, the cyclic responsive under my right. We rose into the darkness, the hangar lights falling away below us as I turned north toward the mountains. The first light of dawn was just beginning to touch the eastern horizon, turning the sky from black to deep purple. Below us, the city lights of Boulder spread out like a glowing circuit board, gradually giving way to the darker expanse of the foothills. Ahead, the Rockies rose like the jagged spine of some massive, sleeping beast. "Approaching the search area," I said, checking the GPS. The coordinates put us near Glacier Ridge, a remote section of backcountry, popular with experienced hikers but treacherous in bad weather. "Keep your eyes open." The fog Kelly had mentioned was moving in faster than I'd anticipated. Thick, white banks of it rolled through the valleys like something alive, reducing visibility to less than a quarter mile in places. I dropped altitude, skimming just above the tree line, using the terrain to guide me. "I've got the coordinates locked," Ryan said. "Should be coming up on our left, about 200 meters. I banked gently, my eyes scanning the rocky slope below. The rising sun was hitting the fog now, creating an eerie luminescence that made it hard to judge distance and depth. Everything looked flat, two-dimensional, like we were flying through an old photograph. "There," Ryan pointed. "I see something. 10 o'clock. I followed his indication and spotted a small clearing among the rocks and scattered pines. A figure in a red jacket was waving both arms over his head. The universal signal for rescue. "I see him," I confirmed, starting my approach. "Looks like he's mobile." That was the first thing that struck me as odd. The distress call had mentioned a broken leg, but this guy was standing, walking even, as he moved to the center of the clearing. I pushed the thought aside. Adrenaline can do strange things to people. Maybe the injury wasn't as bad as he'd thought. I brought the helicopter into a hover about 50 feet above the clearing, feeling the controls shudder slightly as we entered the rotor wash bouncing back from the rocky ground. Ryan had already opened the side door and was preparing the rescue harness. "I'm going to set her down," I said. The clearing was tight but manageable, and if the guy could walk, there was no need for a hoist operation. "Copy that," Ryan replied. I eased the collective down, feeling for the ground through the pedals and the slight change in pressure as the skids made contact. The landing was smooth, textbook. Through the windscreen I could see the figure in the red jacket approaching, one hand raised to shield his face from the rotor wash. Ryan jumped out, keeping low as he moved toward the hiker. I kept my hand on the collective, ready to pull pitch if anything went wrong. The turbine whine settled into a steady idle. That's when I noticed the fog. It had been behind us when we landed, but now it was moving in from all sides, thick and fast, like walls closing in. Visibility was dropping by the second. I keyed my mic to warn Ryan, but before I could speak he stopped. Just stopped, about 10 feet from the hiker, his body language suddenly tense. "Ryan?" I called. "What's wrong?" He took a step backward, then another. The figure in the red jacket hadn't moved, just stood there, one arm still raised, perfectly still. "Carter." Ryan's voice came through the headset, tight and controlled. "There's nobody in that jacket." My blood went cold. "What?" "It's propped up on sticks. There's nobody here." I looked again, and he was right. What I'd taken for a person was just a jacket suspended on a crude framework of branches, arms stuffed and positioned to wave in the rotor wash. The head was a rolled-up sleeping bag. "Get back in the aircraft," I said, my voice harder than I intended. "Now." Ryan didn't argue. He turned and started back toward the helicopter, moving faster now. I scanned the tree line looking for any sign of movement, any indication of who had set this up or why. That's when the radio crackled. "Help!" The voice was male, young, distorted by static. "Please help me." I grabbed the handset. "This is November 7-2 Foxtrot. Identify yourself. What's your location?" "Glacier Ridge," the voice said. I fell. "My leg. Please, you have to help me." Ryan was back at the helicopter now, climbing in and slamming the door shut. His face was pale. "We're at Glacier Ridge," I said into the radio. "Where are you exactly?" "I can see you," the voice replied. "I can see your helicopter." I felt the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I scanned the surrounding terrain again, but the fog was too thick now. We were completely socked in, visibility down to maybe 50 feet in any direction. "Ryan, do you see anyone?" "Negative," he said, his voice tight. "But Carter, look at this." He was holding up his phone, showing me the screen. The GPS coordinates for our current location were displayed clearly. Below that, the coordinates from the original distress call. They didn't match. We were off by nearly 3 miles. "That's impossible," I said. "I locked on to those coordinates. We followed them exactly." "I know," Ryan said. "But look at the original call log." He pulled up the dispatch record. The coordinates were completely different from what was currently showing in our GPS. They'd changed. Or we'd followed something else entirely. The radio crackled again. "Why won't you help me?" The voice was different now, still young but with an edge of something else. Anger, desperation. "I can see you. I've been waiting." I pulled pitch, feeling the helicopter lighten on its skids. "We're getting out of here." "Agreed." Ryan said. As we lifted off, the fog seemed to resist us, thick and clingy like we were rising through something with substance. The altimeter spun up slowly. 50 feet, 100, 150. The clearing disappeared below us into the white void. "Where are you going?" The voice on the radio was clearer now, almost conversational. "I'm still here. You came all this way." I didn't respond. Protocol said to maintain radio contact, but every instinct I had was screaming to ignore it. I focused on my instruments, trusting them to guide us through the soup. Airspeed, altitude, heading. The numbers were solid, reliable, real. We climbed through 2,000 feet and broke out of the fog layer into clear morning air. Below us, the cloud bank stretched out like an ocean, completely obscuring the ground. The sun was higher now, turning everything golden and beautiful. It felt wrong somehow, that contrast between what we'd just experienced and this peaceful morning scene. "November 7-2 Foxtrot, this is dispatch. What's your status?" Kelly's voice cut through, professional and concerned. I keyed the mic. "Dispatch, we're Code 4, returning to base. The distress call was a false alarm." "Copy that. We've been trying to reach you for the past 20 minutes. Your transponder went offline." I checked the panel. The transponder was on, squawking our assigned code like it should be. "Our equipment shows normal." "Understood. Safe flight back." Ryan was quiet during the return trip, staring out the window. I knew we'd need to talk about what happened, but not yet. Not until we were on the ground, away from the mountains. We landed at the base 40 minutes later. I shut down the turbine and sat there for a moment, listening to the blades slow their rotation, that familiar winding down sound that usually brought comfort. Today, it didn't. "I've been doing this for 12 years, Ryan said quietly. "Army medevac, civilian rescue. I've seen some strange things up there, but that..." "Yeah," I said. "I know." We climbed out and started the post-flight inspection. Everything looked normal. The helicopter was fine. No damage, no issues. Mike Brennan, our head mechanic, came out to meet us. "How'd she handle?" he asked. "Perfectly," I said. "Though we had some GPS anomalies." Mike frowned. "I'll run a diagnostic. We did a full avionics check yesterday. Everything was solid." "Probably just the weather," I said, not believing it myself. Back in the hangar, Ryan and I filed our incident report. We kept it factual, professional, responded to distress call, found staged rescue scene, coordinates inconsistent, returned to base. No embellishment, no speculation. Kelly read it over and gave us a long look, but didn't ask questions. I went home, took a shower, tried to sleep. Couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that jacket on its frame of sticks, arms raised in the rotor wash like it was waving goodbye. 3 days later, I was in the hangar office doing paperwork when Kelly called me over. "Carter, I need you to look at something." She pulled up the dispatch log from that morning and pointed to the screen. The call that came in, the distress signal, I've been going through the recordings. "And? There's no call," she said. "I remember taking it, I remember writing down the coordinates and calling you, but there's no record, no audio file, no phone number, nothing." I stared at the screen, feeling that same cold sensation from 3 days ago creeping back up my spine. "That's not possible," I said. "You called me. You gave me the coordinates." "I know what I did," Kelly said. And there was a tremor in her voice I'd never heard before. "But according to this system, that call never happened." We stood there in silence for a moment. "There's something else," she said finally. I checked the historical records. 5 years ago, we got a similar call. Same area, Glacier Ridge. Single male hiker, reported fall, broken leg, same coordinates. What happened? The crew that responded found nothing. No hiker, no evidence anyone had been there. They wrote it off as a hoax call. She clicked to another screen. 8 years before that, same thing. Same coordinates, same description. How far back does it go? She shook her head. I don't know. These are the only digital records we have. Anything older is in paper archives downstairs. I thought about that jacket on the sticks, positioned just right to wave in the rotor wash. Someone had put it there recently enough that it hadn't weathered much. But if the GPS coordinates had changed, if we'd gone somewhere we weren't supposed to be. Pull the archives, I said. I want to know. Kelly nodded and left. I turned back to the window looking out at the mountains. They sat there in the distance, massive and indifferent, keeping their secrets. The archives showed 3 more incidents: 1989, 1994, 1998. Same location, same description. One of the reports from '94 included a note from the pilot. Found camping equipment at scene, fresh, nobody present. I showed Ryan the records that evening. We sat in the hangar break room, going through the files while outside the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Every 5 to 8 years, Ryan said. Like clockwork. Someone playing a game? I suggested, not believing it. For 35 years? Same location, same setup? He shook his head. That's dedication. Then what? He didn't answer. We both knew there wasn't a rational explanation that fit all the facts. I tried to let it go, move on. We had other calls, other rescues. Real emergencies with real people who needed help. The incident at Glacier Ridge went into the files, another strange occurrence in a job that sometimes produced them. But I couldn't stop thinking about that voice on the radio. I can see you. I've been waiting. Waiting for what? 6 weeks later, I was scheduled for a solo flight to deliver supplies to one of the remote ranger stations. Routine, nothing complicated. I pre-flighted the helicopter, loaded the cargo, and lifted off into a clear afternoon. The flight plan took me north, skirting the edge of the area where we'd responded to that call. I told myself I wasn't going to look, wasn't going to deviate from my course. But as I approached, I found my hand on the cyclic, banking slightly west. Just to look, just to see. The fog was back, sitting in the valleys like it had never left. I should have turned away, stuck to my flight plan. Instead, I descended, dropping below the ridgeline into the white. The clearing appeared exactly where it had been before. I came to a hover overhead, and my heart stopped. The jacket was gone. The sticks were still there, broken and scattered now by wind or animals, but in the center of the clearing, clearly visible against the rocky ground, was something new. A bright orange rescue harness. Our harness, the one Ryan had been preparing that morning. I hadn't seen him bring it out of the helicopter. We'd left in such a hurry I'd assumed he'd secured everything. But there it was, laid out in a perfect circle, like it was waiting. I didn't land. I climbed back up, broke through the fog layer, and continued to the ranger station. Delivered the supplies, filed my flight plan, returned to base. I didn't mention what I'd seen. That night, I checked the equipment logs. The harness was accounted for, signed back into inventory the same day as the incident. Ryan's signature was right there on the form. I called him. The harness we took on the Glacier Ridge call. You brought it back, right? Of course, he said. Why? Just checking something. You're sure? Positive. It's in the equipment locker, tagged and ready. Carter, what's this about? Nothing, I said. Just doing inventory. I hung up and sat in my apartment, staring at the wall. 2 harnesses then. One in the locker, accounted for. One in the clearing, waiting. I haven't been back to Glacier Ridge. I file my flight plans carefully now, making sure they don't take me anywhere near those coordinates. Other crews have flown the area since, routine patrols and supply runs. Nobody's reported seeing anything unusual, but I know it's still there. The clearing, the coordinates, whatever it is that calls out every few years, patient and persistent. Sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep, I pull up the dispatch logs and look at the dates. 1989, 1994, 1998, 2003, 2011, 2016. The pattern isn't exact, but it's there. 5 to 8 years between incidents. We're coming up on 8 years since the last one. Kelly retired last month. On her last day, she pulled me aside and handed me a sealed envelope. "If the call comes in again," she said, "don't go. I don't care what the regulations say, what your training tells you. Just don't go." I asked her why, but she just shook her head and walked away. I put the envelope in my flight bag. Haven't opened it. Not sure I want to know what's inside. But I think about it every time I climb into the cockpit, every time I head north toward the mountains. I think about that voice on the radio, clear and desperate and somehow wrong. "I can see you. I've been waiting." Last week, I was doing a maintenance flight, testing some new avionics. The route was south, nowhere near Glacier Ridge. But as I passed over the communications tower on Black Mountain, my radio crackled with a burst of static, and for just a moment, through the white noise, I heard it. "Help! Please help me!" The same voice, the same words. I checked my GPS. The coordinates matched exactly where we'd been that morning 6 weeks ago. I flew back to base and told Mike the radio was acting up. He ran a full diagnostic. Everything checked out perfectly. No faults, no issues. I haven't told anyone else. What would I say? That something in those mountains calls out, mimics distress signals, lures rescue crews to a clearing where reality doesn't quite work right? That it's been doing this for at least 35 years, maybe longer. They'd ground me for psychological evaluation. So I keep flying. I keep responding to calls. I keep doing my job. But I've noticed something. On clear days, when I'm flying past that section of the Rockies, I can see the fog. It sits in that one valley, in that one specific location, even when everywhere else is crystal clear. A small patch of white against the dark green of the forest, perfectly stationary, like it's waiting. The coordinates are programmed into my GPS now. Not officially, just a personal waypoint I added. I've labeled it "Do Not Approach." Sometimes I wonder what would happen if I went back. If I landed in that clearing, got out, walked into the fog. Maybe I'd find answers. Maybe I'd find whoever set up that jacket on its frame of sticks, whoever left that harness in a perfect circle. Or maybe I'd just find more questions. Ryan transferred to a different base 3 weeks ago. Boulder Metro Fire Department. Flying air ambulance in the city. Safer, he said. Better hours. But I saw the way he looked at the mountains before he left. The same way I look at them now, with caution, with respect, with fear. Yesterday, Kelly's replacement called me. Her name is Jennifer, young and eager, fresh from dispatch training. She wanted to review emergency protocols, run through some scenarios. One of them was a distress call from Glacier Ridge, single male hiker, reported fall, broken leg. I told her to mark that area as high risk, unpredictable weather, difficult terrain. If we get a call from there, I said, we verify, we confirm, we don't just go. She looked at me strangely but made the note, I don't know if it'll make a difference when the call comes again. And it will come again. The pattern is clear, the timeline consistent. Somewhere between now and 3 years from now, that radio will crackle to life. A voice will call out, young and desperate and perfectly convincing, and someone will respond. Maybe it'll be me. Maybe I'll be the one flying when dispatch patches through that call. Maybe I'll be the one to follow those coordinates into the fog, to land in that clearing, to find out what's really waiting there. I tell myself I won't go, that I'll refuse, turn back, find some excuse. But I know myself. I know this job. When someone calls for help, you respond. That's the rule, the one thing that keeps this whole system working. You don't question, you don't hesitate, you go. And that's what scares me most. Not the fog, or the changing coordinates, or the impossible harness in the clearing. It's knowing that when the call comes, I'll answer. I'll fire up the turbine, lift into the sky, and point my nose toward those mountains. Because that's what we do. The envelope from Kelly is still in my flight bag. Sometimes I take it out, hold it, feel the weight of whatever's inside. But I don't open it. Maybe I should. Maybe whatever she wrote would change things, give me a reason to break that fundamental rule. But I don't think it would matter. The mountains are waiting. The fog is waiting. Whatever makes those calls, whatever arranges those signals and equipment in that clearing, is waiting. And eventually, when the time is right, it will call again. I just hope I'm not the one who answers, but I know I will be. My name is Ethan Cross. I've been flying search and rescue in the Colorado Rockies for 11 years now. Night flights are part of the job, something you learn to handle, or you find a different line of work. I thought I'd seen everything the darkness could throw at me. I was wrong. It started on a Tuesday in late October. The call came in at 9:15 p.m., right as I was finishing my shift paperwork. I was the only pilot on duty for night operations, flying November 8 for Lima, our newer Bell 429 equipped with the FLIR thermal imaging system. State-of-the-art, top of the line. The kind of equipment that's supposed to make night rescues safer, easier. The dispatcher that night was Marcus Webb. No, wait, Marcus Thompson. Good guy, 20 years on the job. His voice came through clear and professional. Ethan, we've got a situation up near Twin Peaks. Cross-country skier separated from his group, hasn't checked in. They think he might have gone off trail near the north face. I pulled up the area map on my tablet. Twin Peaks was rugged country. A lot of deadfall timber and steep ravines. Not somewhere you wanted to be alone after dark, especially with temperatures dropping into the teens. How long has he been missing? I asked. Group last saw him around 6 p.m. They hiked out to get cell service. Called it in about 40 minutes ago. 3.5 hours. Long enough for hypothermia to set in if he was injured or stuck somewhere. I'll be airborne in 15. What's the last known position? Marcus read off the coordinates and I programmed them into the flight computer. My flight medic for the evening was Lisa Chen. No, Lisa Morgan. She'd been with the team for 5 years, calm under pressure, good instincts. I trusted her completely. We met at the helicopter 15 minutes later. The night was clear and cold. Stars sharp overhead like diamond points. No moon yet, wouldn't rise for another 2 hours. Perfect conditions for the FLIR system. Lisa loaded the medical gear while I ran through the pre-flight. Everything checked out normal. The thermal camera powered up clean, showing the heat signatures of our bodies as bright white shapes against the cooler grays of the hangar and tarmac. "Ready when you are," Lisa said, strapping in. I pulled pitch and we lifted into the darkness. The city lights of Denver fell away behind us as we climbed, heading west into the mountains. At night, the Rockies become a different world. No visual references, no horizon, just the instruments and the occasional lights of a remote cabin or road far below. I kept my scan going, checking the gauges, monitoring the GPS, listening to the smooth turbine whine. Everything normal, everything routine. "Approaching the search area," I said as we crossed the ridgeline. Below us, nothing but darkness. The kind of deep black you only get in wilderness miles from any light pollution. Lisa activated the FLIR system, and the main display lit up with the thermal image. The world transformed into shades of gray and white, cooler areas dark, heat sources bright. The tree canopy showed as a mottled pattern, the rocky outcrops cooler and darker. "I'm going to start a search pattern," I said, beginning a systematic grid. "Keep your eyes on that screen." "Copy that." We flew the pattern for 20 minutes, covering the area around the last known position. The FLIR showed wildlife, deer, probably elk, their heat signatures distinctive against the cold ground, but no human. "Let's expand the search," I said. He could have gotten turned around, headed the wrong direction. Lisa adjusted the camera angle, sweeping across the terrain below. "Wait," she said suddenly. "I've got something. 2 o'clock, about 300 meters. I banked right and descended. On the FLIR display, a bright white shape stood out clearly. Human-sized, human-shaped, stationary in a small clearing among the trees. "That's gotta be him," I said, feeling a surge of relief. "Good eyes, Lisa." I brought the helicopter into a hover over the clearing, dropping to 200 feet. The downdraft from our rotors kicked up snow, creating a white swirl in the darkness. The FLIR image stayed locked on the heat signature below. "I'm setting up for landing," I said. The clearing looked big enough, just barely. "Get ready to deploy." Lisa was already at the door, thermal blanket and medical kit ready. "Standing by my." I descended carefully, feeling for the ground. The skids touched down solid, and I reduced power to idle, keeping the turbines running. "We're down, go!" Lisa jumped out, keeping low under the rotors. I watched her move toward the heat signature on the FLIR, her own white shape bright against the dark ground. Then she stopped, just froze in place, maybe 30 feet from the target. "Lisa?" I called over the headset. "What's wrong?" Her voice came back strained, confused. "Ethan, there's nobody here." I looked at the FLIR display. The heat signature was right there, clear as day, exactly where it had been. A human shape, standing upright, radiating warmth. "I'm looking at it right now on thermal," I said. "You're practically on top of it." "I'm telling you, there's nothing here." She turned slowly, her heat signature rotating on the display. Just trees and snow. That made no sense. The FLIR doesn't lie. It sees heat, that's all. If something is warm, it shows up. If it's cold, it doesn't. There's no in-between, no malfunction that creates phantom images. "Check your position," I said, though I could see exactly where she was. "I'm right here, exactly where the target should be." She waved her arms, and I watched her white shape on the display mirror the movement. "There's nothing." I stared at the screen. The second heat signature was still there, motionless about 10 feet from Lisa. Clear and distinct, but she was saying it wasn't there. "Come back to the aircraft," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "Now." Lisa didn't argue. She turned and started back toward the helicopter. On the thermal display, her shape moved away from the phantom signature, and the phantom signature followed her. "Lisa, move faster," I said, my hand tightening on the collective. "Why? What's wrong?" "Just move." She broke into a run. The heat signature on the screen matched her pace, staying about 10 feet behind her, moving with an odd fluidity that made my skin crawl. Lisa reached the helicopter and climbed in fast, slamming the door shut. I pulled pitch immediately, lifting off before she'd even buckled in. "What the hell was that about?" she demanded, breathing hard. I pointed at the FLIR display. "Look." The phantom heat signature stood in the clearing below us, alone now, not moving. Just standing there, radiating warmth that shouldn't exist. Lisa stared at the screen, her face pale. That's impossible. I'm telling you, there was nothing there. Nothing. I climbed to 500 feet and circled back over the clearing. The signature remained visible, bright and clear. I switched the FLIR to narrow field of view, zooming in on it. The shape was human, definitely. I could make out arms, legs, a head. It stood perfectly still, like a statue. But the heat pattern was wrong. Normal human thermal images show variation, hotter at the core, cooler at the extremities. This was uniform, the same temperature throughout. "Try the radio," I said. "Hail the skier. See if he responds." Lisa keyed the emergency frequency. "This is Colorado Mountain Rescue to missing skier. If you can hear this transmission, please respond. We are overhead in a helicopter and ready to assist. Please respond." Static. Then, faintly, something that might have been a voice, too distorted to make out words. "Say again," Lisa said. "You're breaking up. Repeat your last transmission." The static cleared for just a moment. A male voice, young, calm. "I can see your lights." I looked down. We were running dark except for the anti-collision strobes. "We don't have our searchlight on," I said. Lisa and I exchanged glances. She keyed the mic again. "Can you confirm your position? Are you in the clearing below us?" "I'm here," the voice said. "I've been waiting." The same words from the morning I'd heard about in Kelly's report. But that was a different pilot, a different mountain, wasn't it? I checked my GPS coordinates, cross-referenced them with the search map. We were 15 miles from Glacier Ridge, nowhere near that area. "What's your name?" Lisa asked. "Are you injured?" "Cold," the voice replied. "So cold. Please help me." On the FLIR, the heat signature raised one arm slowly, deliberately, waving. "Ethan," Lisa's voice was tight. "Whatever that is, it's not our missing skier." I knew she was right. Every instinct I had was screaming it. But protocol said we had to verify, had to be certain. "I'm going to do one more pass with the searchlight." I flipped the switch and the night erupted into harsh white illumination. The beam cut through the darkness, sweeping across the clearing below. Empty. Just snow and trees and rocks. No person, no heat source, nothing. I swept the light back and forth, covering every inch of the clearing. Nothing. But on the FLIR display, the heat signature stood exactly where it had been. Arm still raised, waving slowly. "We're leaving," I said, killing the searchlight and banking away from the clearing. "Agreed," Lisa said quietly. I climbed to 1,000 feet and headed north, expanding the search pattern. My hands were shaking slightly on the controls, and I forced myself to focus on the instruments, on the procedure. 20 minutes later, Lisa called out another contact. "I've got a heat signature, northeast ridge. This one's moving." I turned toward it, wary now. "You sure?" "It's different from the last one. Look at the thermal pattern, hot core, cooler extremities. That's real." She was right. The signature looked normal, human. It was moving slowly, erratically, stumbling through the snow. "That's our guy," I said, relief washing through me. We found a landing spot about 50 yards from the heat signature and sat down. This time I went with Lisa, leaving the helicopter running. The man was right where the FLIR said he'd be. Mid-20s, ski gear, hypothermic but conscious. His name was David something, and he'd gotten separated from his group after dark, become disoriented. We got him wrapped in thermal blankets and into the helicopter. He was lucid enough to talk, complaining about the cold, asking about his friends. Normal. Real. I lifted off and headed for the hospital in Boulder. Lisa monitored David's vitals in the back while I focused on flying. The mission was successful. We'd found our missing person, he'd be fine with treatment. A good outcome. But I couldn't stop thinking about that first heat signature, the one that wasn't there. We landed at Boulder Community Hospital 45 minutes later and transferred David to the waiting medical team. He'd make a full recovery, they said. Mild hypothermia, some frostbite on his fingers, but nothing serious. Lisa and I flew back to base in silence. When we landed and shut down, she turned to me. "What was that out there? In the first clearing?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "The FLIR doesn't malfunction like that. It doesn't show things that aren't there." "I know." We filed our report, keeping it factual. Located missing person, successful rescue, returned to base. No mention of the anomaly. What would we even say? That our thermal camera showed a heat signature that didn't exist? That it followed Lisa across the clearing? That it waved at us? They'd pull us for evaluation, ground the aircraft for inspection. And for what? We had no proof, no explanation. Just a weird reading on a display that could have been anything. Equipment glitch, thermal reflection off the snow, something. I went home and tried to sleep, couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that heat signature on the display, arm raised, perfectly still and perfectly wrong. The next morning, I came in early and asked our avionics tech, Jake Palmer, to check the FLIR system. "Run a full diagnostic," I said. "I want to make sure everything's calibrated correctly." Jake looked puzzled, but nodded. "Sure, Ethan. Any particular reason?" "Just want to be thorough. That's expensive equipment." He ran the tests while I watched. Everything came back green. No faults, no errors, calibration perfect. The system was working exactly as designed. "Clean as a whistle," Jake said. "Whatever you were worried about, it's not the equipment." "Thanks," I said, not feeling reassured at all. I pulled the flight recorder data from the previous night and took it to the briefing room. The FLIR system records everything it sees, stores it for review. I pulled up the footage from the first clearing and watched it again. There it was, clear and unmistakable. A human-shaped heat signature, bright white against the dark background. I watched it follow Lisa toward the helicopter. Saw it stop when she reached safety. Saw it wave when we circled back. I zoomed in on the thermal image, enhancing the resolution. The shape had details. Fingers on the raised hand, definition in the legs and torso. But the heat pattern was all wrong. Too uniform, too consistent. Like it was being generated artificially. Or like it wasn't heat at all. I sat back, trying to make sense of it. The FLIR sees infrared radiation, interprets it as heat. But what if it was seeing something else? Something that produces infrared but isn't heat in the normal sense. I pulled up the radio recording from that night. The voice that had responded to Lisa's call. "I can see your lights. I'm here. I've been waiting. So cold. Please help me." The words were clear enough, but there was something underneath them. A quality I couldn't quite identify. I ran the audio through a spectrum analyzer, looking at the frequency patterns. Normal human speech has a specific pattern, harmonics and overtones that are consistent across all voices. This recording had those patterns, but it also had something else. Additional frequencies, too low to consciously hear, but there nonetheless. A subharmonic drone that pulsed slowly, rhythmically. I sat there for a long time, staring at the analysis. Then I closed the file and locked it away. 3 days later, we got another call. Missing hiker, this time near Mount Evans. Different area, different circumstances. But again, a night search. I was assigned the flight. Lisa was my medic again. We didn't talk about the previous incident as we pre-flighted the helicopter. I ran through my checks with extra care, making sure the FLIR system was functioning correctly. It was. The flight to Mount Evans took 40 minutes. Clear night again. No moon. We arrived at the search area and began our pattern, Lisa monitoring the thermal display. "I've got a signal," she said after 15 minutes. "South face, near the tree line." I turned toward it, my pulse quickening. "What's it look like?" "Normal, moving, natural heat pattern. I think it's real." I descended toward the signature. It was moving slowly across a rocky slope, heading upward. Wrong direction for someone who's lost, but hypothermia affects judgment. People do strange things when they're freezing. We found a landing zone and sat down. This time, Lisa insisted I come with her, and I didn't argue. We approached the heat signature together, moving carefully across the uneven ground. And we found him, alive, conscious, hypothermic. His name was Marcus. Different last name I don't remember. He'd been out for 6 hours, gotten turned around in the dark. We loaded him up and flew him to the hospital. Successful rescue, everything normal. But on the flight back to base, Lisa pulled up the FlyR recording. "Look at this," she said, pointing to the display. She'd isolated a single frame from our approach to the landing zone. In the background, barely visible at the edge of the thermal image, was another heat signature. Human-shaped, standing motionless among the trees. "I didn't see that during the flight," I said. "Neither did I. It was only there for a few seconds, then it disappeared." I looked closer. The signature was faint but unmistakable. The same uniform heat pattern as before. The same wrong shape. "Could be wildlife," I said, not believing it. "Elk, maybe, standing on its hind legs." Lisa didn't respond. We both knew what we were looking at. Over the next month, we flew 6 more night rescues. 5 were routine, found the missing person, brought them home, no issues. But one, up near Berthoud Pass, had another anomaly. We'd located our subject, a snowshoer with a sprained ankle, and were loading him into the helicopter when Lisa called out, "Ethan, look at the display." On the FlyR screen, a heat signature stood at the edge of the clearing, watching us. "Do you see anything?" I asked, scanning the darkness. "No, just on thermal." The signature didn't move, just stood there while we completed the rescue and lifted off. As we climbed away, I looked back at the display. It was still there, motionless, arm raised in that same slow wave. I started keeping a log, not official, just personal notes, dates, locations, conditions. Every time we saw one of the anomalies, I recorded it. Lisa did the same. Patterns emerged. The signatures only appeared during night flights. They were always in remote areas, away from any trails or roads. They never appeared on our initial approach, only after we'd been in the area for several minutes. And they were becoming more frequent. In December, we saw 3 in 1 week. January, 5. February, we saw 1 on every single night flight. Other crews started reporting them too. At first obliquely, had some weird FLIR readings last night, then more directly. One pilot, Sarah Brennan, filed a formal report after her thermal system showed a heat signature that her spotter couldn't verify visually. The brass ordered an investigation. They brought in technicians from the helicopter manufacturer, FLIR specialists, avionics experts. They tested every thermal camera in our fleet, ran diagnostics, checked calibrations. Everything came back normal. No equipment faults, no technical explanations. The systems were working perfectly. The official conclusion was atmospheric conditions causing thermal reflections. Temperature inversions, they said, could create false images on infrared sensors. It was rare but documented. The report recommended additional training on interpreting FLIR images and recognizing false positives. Case closed. But the signatures kept appearing. I started reviewing old flight recorder data going back years. I had to request access to the archives, told them I was doing a study on night search efficiency. They gave me clearance. The earliest record I found was from 8 years ago. A night flight to rescue an injured climber. The FLIR recording showed a faint heat signature in the background, barely visible. The crew notes made no mention of it. 6 years ago, another one. Then 4 years ago, 3 years ago. Each time more visible, more distinct. Something was learning. Getting better at being seen. Or we were getting better at seeing it. I shared my findings with Lisa. We sat in the empty briefing room late one night, watching the recordings on a laptop. "It's like they're becoming more solid," she said, "more real. Or like the boundary is thinning," I said, "between whatever they are and where we are." She looked at me. "You think they're real? Like, actually there?" "I don't know what I think anymore, but I know what I see." We watched the most recent recording, the signature from the previous night, standing at the edge of our landing zone. On an impulse, I zoomed in as far as the image would allow. The resolution broke down into pixels, but I could just make out details. The raised arm, the hand, and where the face should be, a blank space. No features, no definition, just smooth uniformity. "Jesus," Lisa whispered. I closed the laptop. "We can't tell anyone about this, not officially." "Why not?" "Because they'll think we're crazy. Or worse, they'll ground us. And then we won't be able to see them anymore, won't be able to track them." "Maybe that would be better." I shook my head. "If we can see them, maybe we can figure out what they are, what they want." Lisa was quiet for a long moment. "What if we don't want to know?" I didn't have an answer for that. March brought the worst storm we'd seen in years. 3 feet of snow in 2 days, wind gusts over 60 miles per hour. When it finally cleared, we had a backlog of calls. Missing skiers, stranded hikers, snowmobilers who'd gotten stuck or injured. I flew 18 hours over 3 days. Every flight, I saw them. Sometimes one, sometimes multiples. Always at the edges of our search areas. Always watching. They were getting closer. On the 4th day, exhausted and running on coffee and adrenaline, I got a call for a solo hiker overdue on Trail Ridge. I lifted off at 11 p.m. with Lisa, heading into the mountains for what felt like the 100th time that week. We found the hiker quickly. False alarm. He'd just lost track of time and hiked out on his own, met us at the trailhead to cancel the search. Good news. Easy mission. But on the flight back, Lisa called out, "Ethan, I'm showing multiple heat signatures, a lot of them." I looked at the FLIR display. My blood went cold. Dozens of heat signatures dotted the mountainside below us. All human-shaped, all stationary, all watching. "How many?" I asked. "I count 37, maybe more." I climbed higher, putting distance between us and whatever was down there. The signatures didn't move, didn't follow, just stood there, scattered across the mountain like sentinels. "They've never appeared in groups before," Lisa said, her voice shaking. "I know. What do we do?" I thought about turning back, landing at the nearest airport, refusing to fly. But I knew it wouldn't matter. Whatever these things were, they weren't confined to one mountain or one night. They were everywhere now. "We go home," I said. "We log it. We keep watching." The flight back was silent. The signatures faded from the display as we left the area, disappearing one by one until the screen showed only empty mountains. I filed my report that night, including the multiple contacts. By morning, there was a memo from administration. Effective immediately, all FLIR anomalies were to be reported to a special investigation team. Do not discuss findings with other crew members. Do not speculate on causes. They were taking it seriously now. Finally. But it was too late. Whatever threshold we'd crossed, whatever line we'd stepped over, there was no going back. The next week, every night, flight reported thermal anomalies. Not just our base, crews from across Colorado, Wyoming, Utah, New Mexico. The reports were all the same. Human-shaped heat signatures, no visual confirmation, appearing in remote areas during night operations. The investigation team interviewed all of us. I told them what I knew, showed them my logs. They took the data and thanked me for my cooperation. Then nothing. No follow-up, no conclusions, no explanations. The flights continued. The signatures kept appearing. Last month, something changed. I was flying a routine supply run to a remote weather station. No rescue mission, no emergency. Just me and the helicopter, following a well-known route I'd flown 100 times. The FLIR was on, not because I needed it, but because I always kept it on now. I wanted to see them coming, and I did. A single heat signature appeared on the ridge ahead of me. I was still 5 miles out, but it was there, clear and bright, waiting. As I approached, I expected it to disappear like they always did when I got close. But it didn't. It stayed visible, growing larger on the display as I closed the distance. 2 miles out, I could see it clearly. The same uniform heat pattern, the same wrong proportions. The arm raised in that familiar wave. 1 mile out, I activated the searchlight. The beam swept across the ridge. And for the first time, I saw it. Not much. Just a shape, darker than the shadows around it, outlined briefly in the light. Human-sized, but not quite human-shaped. The proportions were off, the angles wrong. Then it was gone, and the FLIR showed only empty mountainside. My hands were shaking so badly I had to set down on a nearby plateau and collect myself. I sat there for 10 minutes, engine idling, staring at the darkness outside. They could be seen now, not just on thermal, not just on infrared. They were becoming real. I reported it. The investigation team added it to their files. I don't think they knew what to do with the information any more than I did. 2 weeks ago, Lisa transferred to a different department. Ground operations. No more flights. She didn't say it was because of the signatures, but I knew. I've been flying solo more often now. Fewer medics want to work the night shift. Fewer pilots volunteering for dark operations. The old-timers say it's just a slow season, normal fluctuations in staffing. But I see the way they look at the mountains after sunset. The way they check the FLIR systems before every flight. The way their eyes linger on the displays. They know. We all know. Something is happening in these mountains. Something that's been happening for years, maybe longer, and we're only now developing the technology to see it. The FLIR cameras, the thermal imaging, the night vision, they've given us a window into something that was always there, waiting. And now that we can see them, they can see us too. Last night, I flew a rescue mission alone. Missing climber on Long's Peak injured in a fall. I found him quickly, got him to safety. Successful mission. But on the flight back, the FLIR showed a heat signature in my helicopter. In the back seat, where Lisa used to sit, I looked over my shoulder. Nothing there, just empty seats and medical equipment. But on the display, the signature was clear. Sitting perfectly still, facing forward, watching me. I landed at base and shut down the systems. The signature disappeared from the screen. I checked the cabin thoroughly. Empty. I'm writing this report not because I think anyone will believe it, but because it needs to be documented. Something is happening in the night skies over Colorado. Something that our equipment can see but our eyes can't. Not yet, but I think that's changing. I think the boundary is thinning, And soon we won't need thermal cameras to see what's been watching us all along. Tomorrow night, I have another flight scheduled. Routine patrol, weather monitoring. I'll take off into the darkness with my FLIR system active. And I'll see them again. I know I will. The signatures are everywhere now, on every mountain, in every valley, watching and waiting. And one of these nights I'm going to look at that display and see a heat signature in the pilot's seat, right next to me. I wonder what I'll see when I turn my head. My name is Ryan Mitchell. I've been flying search and rescue helicopters in the Colorado Rockies for 14 years. In that time, I've pulled hundreds of people off these mountains, injured, lost, stranded. I remember most of them, at least their faces. But there's one I can't forget, and according to every official record, she never existed at all. It was mid-January, the kind of cold that makes metal brittle and turns your breath to ice crystals before it leaves your mouth. I'd just finished a training flight and was in the hangar going over maintenance logs when the call came through. Dispatch was handled by Tom Rivera that day, one of our senior coordinators. His voice had that edge I'd learned to recognize, controlled urgency masking real concern. "Ryan, we've got a code red. Avalanche at Copper Basin, multiple parties reported missing. I'm scrambling everything we have." I was already moving toward my helicopter. November 58 Whiskey. "How many missing?" Initial reports say 4, maybe 5. Ski Patrol has beacons on 2 of them, but there's at least one without a transceiver. Weather window is closing fast. Another storm front moving in from the west. I'll be airborne in 10 minutes. My flight medic was supposed to be off that day, so they paired me with Daniel Foster, a paramedic on loan from Boulder Fire. Good reputation, solid skills, but we'd never worked together before. He met me at the helicopter, already geared up. "First time in a mountain rescue bird?" I asked as we strapped in. "Second," he said. "Did one last winter. Snowmobile accident. Stay alert and follow my lead. Avalanche sites are unstable. We might only get one shot at this." He nodded, and I could see he understood the stakes. We lifted off into a gray afternoon sky. The storm Tom mentioned was visible on the horizon, a dark wall of clouds moving toward us like a slow-motion tidal wave. We had maybe 90 minutes before it hit, and in avalanche rescue, every minute counts. After 15 minutes, you're usually recovering bodies, not saving lives. The flight to Copper Basin took 25 minutes, pushing the bell as fast as she'd go. As we approached, I could see the avalanche path, a massive white scar cutting down the mountainside, hundreds of yards wide and probably half a mile long. Snow and debris had piled up at the bottom in chaotic mounds, some 10 feet high. Ski Patrol had set up a command post at the edge of the slide zone. I spotted their orange vests and brought the helicopter into a hover nearby, looking for a safe landing spot. The snow was deep and the terrain uncertain, but I found a relatively flat area about 50 yards from the debris field and set her down. Daniel and I jumped out, keeping low under the rotors. A ski patrol captain named Brooks came running over, his face red from cold and exertion. "We've got 2 victims recovered, both alive," he shouted over the engine noise. "One critical, one stable. We're still searching for 3 more. The beacons aren't getting any returns from the others." "No transceivers on the other 3? I asked. "One beacon pinged during the initial search, then went dead. We think the battery died or it got damaged. The other 2, he shook his head. We don't know if they were wearing them." I looked at the debris field. Thousands of tons of snow, ice chunks the size of cars, broken trees. Finding someone in that without a beacon was nearly impossible. "We'll take your critical patient," I said, "then come back for searches." Brooks nodded and waved to his team. They brought the stretcher over at a run, a a woman in her 40s, unconscious, obvious head trauma. Daniel went to work immediately, checking vitals as we loaded her into the helicopter. Severe hypothermia, possible skull fracture, Daniel reported. She needs a trauma center now. We're gone, I said, climbing back into the pilot's seat. The flight to St. Anthony's Hospital took 18 minutes. We handed off the patient and refueled, then headed straight back to Copper Basin. The storm was closer now, the first snow flurries already falling. When we landed again, Brooks met us with an update. We found another one. Deceased, male, probably in his 20s. That makes 3 accounted for, 2 still missing. Show me where you're searching. He led us to the edge of the debris field, pointing to areas his teams were probing with poles. We're working a grid pattern, but it's slow going. The snow is compressed hard as concrete in some places, loose and deep in others. I studied the avalanche path, trying to read the terrain the way I'd been taught. Where would the slide have carried someone? Where would they most likely end up? What about above the debris field? I asked. Anyone searching up there? Brooks looked uncertain. The whole area is unstable. We didn't want to risk triggering another slide. But it's possible someone got caught at the top, maybe thrown clear. Possible, yeah, but it's a long shot. Long shots were sometimes all we had. I'm going to do an aerial search of the upper slope, I said. Keep your teams working down here. Back in the helicopter, I lifted off and climbed toward the top of the avalanche path. The snow was still falling lightly, visibility decent but deteriorating. I flew a slow pattern along the crown of the slide, the point where the snow had fractured and given way. You see anything? I asked Daniel, who was scanning with binoculars. Negative, just snow and... Wait, there, 10 o'clock, maybe 100 meters from the crown. I turned and looked where he was pointing, a splash of color against the white, blue, bright against the monochrome landscape. I see it, I said, bringing the helicopter around. Looks like a jacket or pack. As we got closer, the shape resolved. A person half buried in snow, not moving. I found a landing spot about 30 yards away and sat down. Could be dangerous, I warned. The crown is right there. Any vibration could bring down more snow. Understood, Daniel said, already grabbing the medical kit. We approached on foot, moving carefully. The figure was a woman, young, probably early 20s. She was buried from the waist down, slumped forward, her long, dark hair covering her face. She wasn't moving, and I didn't expect her to be. The cold and trauma of being caught in an avalanche usually meant unconsciousness at best. But as we got within 10 feet, her head lifted. She looked directly at us, and I saw her eyes, wide, aware, terrified. "Help me," she said, her voice surprisingly strong. "Please, I can't feel my legs." Daniel and I exchanged glances. She'd been buried for over an hour in sub-zero temperatures. By all rights, she should be unconscious or dead. "We've got you," I said, moving to her side. "Stay still, we're going to dig you out." We worked fast, using our hands and a small folding shovel from the medical kit. The snow around her was packed tight, and I could see why she couldn't free herself. It took us nearly 10 minutes to clear enough away to assess her condition. "I'm Daniel. I'm a paramedic," he said, checking her over. "Can you tell me your name?" "Emma," she said. "Emma Cartwright. My legs, I can't feel them at all." "That might be the cold," Daniel said, though his expression was concerned. "We're going to get you out of here and warmed up. Can you tell me what happened?" "I was skiing with my friends. We were crossing below the ridge when I heard this sound, like thunder. I looked up and saw the whole mountain coming down. I tried to ski out of the way, but it hit me, and then everything was white and cold and I couldn't breathe." She was remarkably lucid for someone who'd been buried in an avalanche. No confusion, no slurred speech. Her pupils were responsive, her breathing steady if shallow. We finished digging her out and got her onto a transport sleeve. Her legs looked intact, no obvious fractures, but they were ice cold to the touch even through her ski pants. "We're going to carry you to the helicopter," I said. "Then straight to the hospital. You're going to be okay." She grabbed my arm with surprising strength. "My friends. There were 3 of us." "Did you find them? Are they okay?" "They're still searching," I said carefully. "Do you know where they were when the avalanche hit?" She shook her head. "We were spread out, maybe 50 yards between us. I was in the middle." Daniel and I lifted the sleeve and carried her back to the helicopter. She was light, couldn't have weighed more than 110 pounds. We secured her in the back and I climbed into the pilot's seat. "Control, this is November 58 Whiskey," I radioed to dispatch. "We have 1 survivor from the avalanche, female, early 20s, en route to St. Anthony's, ETA 20 minutes. Tom's voice came back. "Copy that, Ryan. Good work. Ski Patrol reports they've located the last 2 victims, both deceased. That should be everyone." I glanced back at Emma. "Control, the survivor says there were 3 in her party. Has Ski Patrol confirmed the count?" A pause. "Stand by, Ryan." I started the takeoff sequence, lifting off as Tom came back on the radio. "Ryan, Ski Patrol reports the 2 deceased are the remaining missing persons. Total count is 5, 2 survived, 3 deceased. That matches the initial report." I looked at Emma again. She was watching me, her expression confused. "But I'm telling you," I said into the radio, "this survivor says she was part of a group of 3, her plus 2 others. Stand by, Ryan." I climbed away from the mountain, pointing the nose toward Denver. The storm was close now, the first real bands of snow moving in. Behind me, Daniel was wrapping Emma in thermal blankets, attaching monitoring equipment. "Okay, Ryan," Tom's voice came back. "I've checked with the Ski Patrol commander. The initial report was 5 missing persons, all accounted for. 2 survivors, 3 deceased. There's no record of a group of 3. "Then who is this?" I asked, knowing it was a stupid question. "I'm looking at her right now. She says she was with 2 friends. They were skiing together." Another pause. Maybe she's confused. Trauma can cause memory issues. "She's not confused," I said. "She's lucid and coherent. Daniel, confirm." "She's oriented and alert," Daniel said. "Vitals are surprisingly stable given the circumstances. No signs of head trauma or confusion. We'll sort it out at the hospital," Tom said. "Just get her there safely." The flight was routine. I kept checking on Emma through the conversation mirror. She'd closed her eyes, but her lips were moving slightly, like she was talking to herself. Or praying. We landed at St. Anthony's 18 minutes later. The trauma team was waiting and took over immediately, transferring Emma to a gurney and rushing her inside. Daniel followed to give his report. I stayed with the helicopter, refueling for the trip back to base. The storm had hit fully now. Heavy snow reducing visibility to less than a quarter mile. By the time I was ready to leave, the hospital had put out a temporary flight restriction. All non-emergency helicopters grounded until the weather cleared. I found Daniel in the waiting room filling out paperwork. "How's she doing?" I asked. "Remarkably well. Core temperature was low but not critical. No frostbite, no major injuries. They're warming her slowly and keeping her overnight for observation, but the doctors are amazed. She shouldn't be in this good of shape." "Did she say anything else about her friends?" Daniel shook his head. "She asked about them again. I told her the rescue team was still working. Didn't seem right to tell her the truth until we know more." We waited out the storm in the hospital cafeteria, drinking bad coffee and watching the snow pile up outside. After 2 hours, Tom called my cell. Ryan, I need you to come back to base when you can fly. We've got a situation. What kind of situation? Just get back here. It's about the survivor you brought in. The storm cleared enough to fly by early evening. I made it back to base just after dark. Tom was waiting for me in the operations office, along with Brooks from Ski Patrol and a woman in civilian clothes I didn't recognize. Ryan, this is Karen Shaw from the Park Service, Tom said. She's been coordinating with Ski Patrol on the avalanche incident. Shaw nodded at me, her expression serious. Mr. Mitchell, I need to ask you about the woman you rescued this afternoon. Emma Cartwright, you said her name was. That's right, she told us herself. Can you describe her? Physical details? I thought back. Early 20s, maybe 5'4", slim build, long dark hair, brown eyes. She was wearing a blue jacket, black ski pants. Shaw pulled out a tablet and showed me a photo. Is this her? The picture showed a young woman matching that description exactly, smiling at the camera in what looked like a professional headshot. Yeah, that's her, I said. Who is she? Shaw looked at Tom, then back at me. Mr. Mitchell, that's Emma Cartwright. She was reported missing 3 years ago during a skiing trip in these mountains. The case was never solved. No body was ever found. I felt the temperature in the room drop about 20 degrees. That's impossible. I pulled her out of the snow this afternoon. She was alive, talking. She's at St. Anthony's right now. We know, Tom said quietly. We called the hospital. They confirmed a patient was admitted under that name this afternoon, brought in by air ambulance from Copper Basin. So, what's the problem? Shaw leaned forward. Mr. Mitchell, we went to the hospital to interview her. We wanted to know where she'd been for 3 years, how she survived. And? She's not there. According to the hospital, no patient by that name was ever admitted. Their records show no incoming trauma patients this afternoon at all. I stared at her. That's insane. We brought her in. Daniel and I carried her to the trauma team ourselves. They wheeled her inside. I believe you, Shaw said. But there's no record of it, no admission forms, no treatment records, no patient in any of their systems under that name. Then talk to the trauma team. They saw her. We did. None of them remember treating anyone matching that description. In fact, they say no helicopter patients came in this afternoon at all. The room started to feel too small. Daniel was there, he can confirm everything. Tom shifted uncomfortably. We talked to Daniel. He says he doesn't remember any patient named Emma Cartwright. He says the only patient you transported today was the woman from the initial rescue, the one with the head injury. No, I said, standing up. No, that's not right. Emma was the second patient, the woman we found near the crown of the avalanche. She was alive. She talked to us. Ryan. Tom's voice was gentle. Daniel says there was no second patient. He says you did one rescue run today, then waited out the storm at the hospital. I pulled out my phone, my hands shaking. I have the flight logs, the radio transmissions. You recorded everything, Tom. Pull the recordings. Tom and Shaw exchanged glances. We did, Tom said. Your first call, reporting the woman with the head injury, clear as day. Your second call saying you were waiting out the storm at the hospital. No mention of a second patient. That's impossible. I radioed it in. You told me Ski Patrol had accounted for everyone, and I said this survivor claimed there were 3 in her group. Your second transmission was about the weather conditions, Ryan. Nothing about another patient. I turned to Brooks. You were there. You saw us bring her to the helicopter. Brooks looked uncomfortable. I saw you make 2 trips to the hospital. The first with the injured woman, the second, you said you were doing a final aerial search before the storm hit. You came back saying you hadn't found anything else. No, I I said, louder than I intended. "That's not what happened. We found her near the Crown, half buried. She was alive, coherent. She told us her name." Shaw pulled out another document. "Mr. Mitchell, this is the official ski patrol report from today's incident. 5 missing persons, all accounted for. 2 survived, 3 deceased. The deceased were identified as Thomas Brennan, Sarah Pike, and Jennifer Martinez. The survivors were Amanda Foster and Craig Russell. There is no Emma Cartwright on this list." "Then your list is wrong," I said, "because I carried her out of the snow myself." "Ryan," Tom said carefully, "I think you should take some time off. It was a stressful day, multiple casualties, bad weather. Sometimes my mind is fine," I snapped. "I know what I saw, what I did." Shaw stood up. "Mr. Mitchell, I'm not here to question your professionalism or your mental state. But the facts are concerning. A woman matching Emma Cartwright's description, a woman who's been missing for 3 years, somehow appears at an avalanche site. You rescue her, bring her to a hospital, and then every trace of her disappears. No records, no witnesses, nothing." "Except me," I said. "I'm a witness." "Yes," Shaw said quietly. "You are." They let me go after another hour of questions, the same questions asked different ways. I drove home in a daze, my mind replaying every moment of that rescue. The sound of Emma's voice, the feel of the transport sleeve in my hands, the way she'd grabbed my arm and asked about her friends. It had been real, all of it. At home, I pulled up everything I could find on Emma Cartwright. There wasn't much. A few news articles from 3 years ago about a missing skier, a Facebook page that hadn't been updated since then, a family website asking for information. The photos matched. The woman I'd pulled from the snow was definitely Emma Cartwright. I tried calling Daniel, but he didn't answer. Sent a voicemail. I left a message asking him to call me back, that it was important. He never did. Over the next few days, I became obsessed. I went back to Copper Basin, hiked up to where we'd found her. The snow had been redistributed by wind and weather, but I found the spot. I knew I did. I could picture her exactly, half buried, looking up at us. There was nothing there, just undisturbed snow. I filed a formal report with the Park Service, detailing everything I remembered. Shaw was professional, but non-committal. The case remained open, she said, but there were no leads. I contacted Emma's family through their website. Her mother agreed to meet me at a coffee shop in Boulder. Mrs. Cartwright was in her 50s, careworn and tired. She listened to my story without interruption, her hands wrapped around a coffee cup that had long since gone cold. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. "Mr. Mitchell," she finally said, "in the 3 years since Emma disappeared, I've talked to 7 different people who claimed they'd seen her. 3 said they'd spoken with her. 1 said they'd given her a ride. None of it led anywhere." "I'm not making this up," I said. "I'm a search and rescue pilot. I believe you," she interrupted gently. "I believe you believe it. But Mr. Mitchell, I've learned that the mountains do strange things to people. The isolation, the stress, the altitude. My daughter is gone. I've accepted that. And I think you need to accept what your supervisors are telling you." "What if she's still out there?" I asked. "What if she's been alive this whole time and just couldn't get back?" Mrs. Cartwright's eyes were wet. "Then I hope she's at peace. That's all I can hope for now." I was put on mandatory leave 2 weeks later. Not disciplined, Tom was careful to emphasize. Just a break. Time to decompress. They had a counselor I could talk to if I wanted. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I wanted someone to believe me. But nobody did. The physical evidence didn't exist. The recordings I remembered weren't there. Daniel didn't remember. The trauma team didn't remember. Brooks didn't remember. Only me. I spent the leave going through my own memories obsessively, trying to find some inconsistency, some sign that maybe they were right and I'd imagined the whole thing. Some kind of stress-induced hallucination or false memory. But I couldn't find it. Every detail was clear. The weight of her body on the transport sleeve, the specific blue shade of her jacket, the way her voice had sounded when she said her name, Emma Cartwright. Near the end of my leave, I got a package in the mail. No return address, postmarked from somewhere in Montana. Inside was a flash drive and a handwritten note on plain paper. "You're not crazy. DF. DF Daniel Foster." I plugged the flash drive into my laptop. It contained a single video file, time-stamped from the day of the avalanche. Phone camera footage, shaky and quick, like it had been filmed secretly. The video showed the inside of a helicopter. My helicopter. In the back, strapped to the medical bench, was Emma Cartwright. She was wrapped in thermal blankets, eyes closed. The timestamp showed it was during our flight to St. Anthony's. Daniel's voice whispering, "I don't know if anyone will believe this. I don't know if I believe it myself. But I'm making this recording as proof because I have a feeling something's not right. This is the second patient from Copper Basin. Ryan found her near the Avalanche Crown. Her name is Emma Cartwright and she's..." The video cut off abruptly. I played it 5 more times. Emma was there, real and solid on the screen. Proof that I hadn't imagined it. I tried calling Daniel's number again. Disconnected. I looked him up online. His social media accounts had been deleted. The Boulder Fire Department had no record of a paramedic by that name. According to their HR department, they'd never had an employee named Daniel Foster. I uploaded the video to 3 different cloud storage services, emailed it to myself, backed it up on 2 external drives. Then I tried to share it with Tom. The file wouldn't send. Every time I tried, the email failed. I tried uploading it to file-sharing sites. Same result. Error messages, corrupted file warnings. I tried showing it to a friend, a guy I'd known for years. He looked at the screen, watched the whole video, and when it finished, he looked at me confused. "What am I supposed to be seeing?" he asked. "It's just an empty helicopter interior." I grabbed the laptop back. On the screen, Emma was clearly visible, exactly as I remembered. "You don't see her?" I asked. "Right there on the medical bench?" He looked at me with concern. "Ryan, there's nobody there, just empty seats." I stopped trying to show people after that. The video is the only proof I have that any of it happened. I watch it sometimes late at night when I can't sleep. Emma is always there on my screen, wrapped in blankets, breathing slowly. But I wonder, if I showed this to someone else now, what would they see? An empty helicopter? Or would the video be corrupted somehow, showing nothing at all? I went back to work after my leave ended. I fly the same routes, respond to the same calls. My crew trusts me. My record is solid. Nobody mentions the incident. But I see the way they look at me sometimes when they think I'm not paying attention. The sidelong glances, the whispered conversations that stop when I walk into a room. They think I had a breakdown, stress-induced delusion brought on by a traumatic call. It happens sometimes in rescue work. People see things, remember things wrong. The mind tries to protect itself. Maybe they're right. Maybe I did imagine the whole thing. Emma, Daniel, all of it. Maybe the video on my laptop is just some glitch, a corruption of data that happens to look like a person. Maybe. But 3 months ago, I was flying a routine transport, bringing supplies to a remote ranger station. The route took me over Copper Basin. I wasn't looking for anything, wasn't even thinking about that day, and I saw her. Standing at the crown of the old avalanche path, alone in the snow. The same blue jacket, the same dark hair. She was looking up at the helicopter, at me. She raised one hand, not waving, just holding it up, like she was trying to show me something, or tell me something. I circled back, but by the time I'd come around for another pass, she was gone. Nothing but unmarked snow. I didn't report it, didn't tell anyone. I just flew on to my destination, delivered my supplies, came home. But now, every time I fly over that area, I look. I can't help myself. Sometimes I don't see anything. Sometimes I do. And each time I see her, she's in a different spot, closer to the ski area, closer to the places where people are. Last week, a skier reported seeing a woman in a blue jacket near the avalanche site, asking for help. Ski patrol responded but found no one. They wrote it off as a miscommunication. But I know it was Emma. She's still out there, still buried in that mountain somehow. Or maybe she's in between, caught in whatever space exists between being found and being lost. I don't know what happened that day. I don't know why everyone else forgot, why the records disappeared, why only Daniel and I remember. I don't know if Emma Cartwright is alive or dead, real or imagined, a person or something else entirely. But I know what I saw, what I did, and I know that someday, maybe soon, someone else will get a call about an avalanche at Copper Basin. They'll fly up there, search the debris field, and near the crown they'll find a woman in a blue jacket, half buried in the snow. She'll be alive. She'll tell them her name is Emma Cartwright. They'll rescue her, bring her to a hospital, and then, like she did with me, she'll disappear. No records, no witnesses, no proof she was ever there, except for whoever pulled her out of the snow. They'll remember. They'll know it was real. And nobody will believe them. I've thought about quitting, finding a different job, moving somewhere far from these mountains. Somewhere Emma Cartwright never went skiing, where avalanches don't happen, where the missing stay missing. But I know it won't matter. Because 2 days ago, I got another call. Single hiker, overdue and missing, last seen near Copper Basin. Female, early 20s, long dark hair, last known to be wearing a blue jacket. I took the call, of course I did, and tomorrow morning, when the weather clears, I'll fly up there and search. I'll scan the snow and the rocks and the trees, looking for any sign of her, and if I find her, when I find her, I'll bring her back, even though I know what will happen next. Even though I know that this time, when I land at the hospital, I'll probably be the one who disappears from the records. But that's the job. When someone calls for help, you go, no matter what, no matter where it leads, even if it leads nowhere at all. My name is Nolan Drake. I've been flying search and rescue in the Colorado Rockies for 16 years. In all that time, I've never repeated a mission. Every call is different. Different location, different circumstances, different people. At least, that's what I believed until 3 weeks ago, when I realized I'd flown the exact same rescue twice. The problem is I have no memory of the first time. It started ordinary enough. Thursday morning, early March. I was in the hangar doing a routine inspection on November 36 Charlie when our dispatcher, Amanda Price, called me over the radio. "Nolan, we've got a situation. Climber reporting distress on Cathedral Spires, says his partner fell and is unresponsive. Weather's clear, but we need to move fast." Cathedral Spires. I pulled up the location on my tablet, studying the terrain. Severe rock formations, technical climbing area, accessible only by air or a brutal 8-hour hike. I'd flown near there dozens of times, but never landed. "I'm on it," I said. "Give me the coordinates." Amanda read them off, and I punched them into the GPS. My flight medic that day was Cole Stevens, a former Army Ranger who'd been with our team for 2 years. Solid, dependable, didn't rattle easy. "Gear up," I told him as he walked into the hangar. "We've got a climber down at Cathedral Spires." Something flickered across his face, just for a second. "Cathedral Spires? Yeah, you know it?" "No," he said, but he was frowning. "I don't think so, just sounded familiar for a second." We loaded the medical equipment and lifted off 15 minutes later. The morning was crystal clear, one of those rare Colorado days where you could see 100 miles in any direction. The Rockies stretched out below us like frozen waves, peaks catching the early sunlight. I flew the approach on autopilot, literally and figuratively. This was routine. Respond to coordinates, locate patient, extract, transport. I'd done it hundreds of times, but as we got closer to Cathedral Spires, something started feeling wrong. Not wrong in a mechanical sense. The helicopter was running perfectly. Weather was ideal, visibility unlimited. It was something else. A growing sense of unease that I couldn't place. "You ever been out here before?" Cole asked over the headset. "I don't think so," I said. "You? No, but it feels, I don't know, familiar somehow." I knew exactly what he meant. The rock formations ahead, the specific way the spires jutted up from the ridgeline, the pattern of snow on the peaks, all of it felt like I'd seen it before. Not just in photos or from a distance, but up close, from this exact angle. "Probably just flew past it on other calls," I said, not believing it. "Yeah, probably." The coordinates led us to a narrow ledge about 300 feet below the summit of the highest spire. I could see 2 figures, one standing and waving, one lying motionless on the rock. "I've got visual on 2 persons," I reported to dispatch. "One appears mobile, one down, preparing for hoist operation." There was no place to land, so we'd have to use the winch. I brought the helicopter into a stable hover about 50 feet above the ledge, fighting the downdrafts that swirled around the rock face. Cole was already in his harness, checking the rescue basket. "Ready when you are." "Lowering now," I said, activating the winch. Cole descended smoothly, and I watched him land on the ledge and move toward the figures. The climber who was standing backed away, giving him room to work. Cole knelt beside the injured climber, checking vitals. That's when I felt it. A sharp, visceral sense of déjà vu so strong it made me dizzy. I'd been here before, in this exact spot, hovering over this exact ledge, watching Cole kneel beside an injured climber while another one stood nearby. But that was impossible. I'd never flown a rescue to Cathedral Spires before. I would remember, wouldn't I? "Nolan, patient is alive but critical." Cole's voice came through the headset. "Head trauma, possible spinal injury. We need to move carefully." "Copy that," I said, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. I watched Cole and the standing climber carefully load the injured person into the basket. Every movement felt scripted, like I was watching a replay of something I'd already seen. The way Cole secured the straps, the angle of the standing climber's body as he helped. Even the specific gust of wind that made the basket swing slightly as it lifted off the ledge. I'd seen all of this before. "Basket is secure, bringing it up," I said, and the words felt like lines I was reciting from a script I didn't remember learning. The injured climber came up first. Young guy, maybe 25, climbing helmet cracked, blood on his face. Cole came up next and we secured both in the helicopter. "The other climber?" I asked. "Says he'll wait for ground rescue," Cole replied. He's not injured, just shaken up. I nodded and pulled pitch, climbing away from the spire. As we gained altitude, I glanced back at the ledge. The standing climber was still there, but he wasn't looking at us. He was staring up at the summit, perfectly still, and something about his posture made my skin crawl. We flew to Denver Health Medical Center, delivered the patient, and returned to base. The whole flight, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd done this before. Not just something similar. This exact mission, these exact movements. Back at the hangar, I pulled up the flight logs while Cole restocked the medical supplies. "You okay?" he asked. "You seem off." "Just that déjà vu feeling," I said. "Really strong." "Yeah, I had it too. Weird." I scrolled through the logs, going back months, then years, looking for any previous missions to Cathedral Spires. Nothing. According to our records, we'd never flown a rescue there before. "Must be one of those things," Cole said, shrugging it off. "Brains are weird." But I couldn't let it go. That night at home, I went through my personal logbook, a habit I'd maintained since my first flight instructor told me to always keep my own records. Every flight I'd ever made, documented in my handwriting. There, 3 years earlier, was an entry that made my blood run cold. March 14th, Cathedral Spires Rescue. Climber down, head trauma. Successful extraction. My handwriting. My logbook. But I had absolutely no memory of writing it or flying that mission. I checked the date against the official dispatch records. Nothing. No record of any rescue to Cathedral Spires that day, or any day around it. I called Cole that night. "Hey, do me a favor," he said. "Check your personal records from 3 years ago. March 14th. Tell me what you were doing that day. That's specific. Why? Just humor me." He called back 20 minutes later. His voice was tight. "Nolan, according to my logbook, I flew a rescue with you that day. Cathedral Spires. Climber with head trauma. You remember it?" "No, not at all. But it's in my handwriting, right there in my logbook. What the hell is going on?" "I don't know," I said. "But I'm going to find out." The next morning, I went to Amanda at dispatch. She'd been with the company for 12 years. If anyone would remember a Cathedral Spires rescue, it would be her. "Amanda, I need you to search for something. Any rescues at Cathedral Spires, any date, going back as far as your records go." She gave me a curious look, but pulled up the database. "Specific reason?" "Just checking something." She searched for several minutes, then shook her head. "Nothing. We've never had a call there. Why?" I showed her my logbook entry. Her frown deepened. "That's your handwriting?" "Yes. But there's no record in our system. No dispatch log, no flight plan, no incident report." She looked up at me. "Nolan, where did this entry come from?" "That's what I'm trying to figure out." Over the next few days, I became obsessed. I pulled every resource I could think of, trying to find some trace of that first rescue. Hospital records from Denver Health. No admission matching the patient from 3 years ago. Climber registration logs. No permits issued for Cathedral Spires on that date. Even weather records, thinking maybe I could find something that proved I'd flown that day. Nothing. It was like the mission had never happened. Except Cole and I both had written records of it, in our own handwriting, and now we'd apparently flown the exact same mission again. I made a list of everything I could remember from the recent rescue. Every detail, no matter how small. Weather, clear, unlimited visibility. Time, 8:47 a.m. Dispatch, 9:23 a.m. on scene. Patient, male, approximately 25 years old, brown hair, red climbing jacket. Injury, head trauma, possible spinal injury. Other climber, Male, gray jacket, black climbing pants. The way the wind gusted when we lifted the basket. The standing climber staring up at the summit as we left. Then I tried to remember the first rescue, the one from 3 years ago. I closed my eyes, focused, tried to pull up any memories, and slowly, impossibly, they came. Not like normal memories. More like watching a video someone else had recorded. Distant, foggy, but definitely there. I remembered the approach to cathedral spires. The same clear morning. The same hover over the ledge. Cole descending, kneeling beside the injured climber. But there were differences. Small ones, but they were there. The injured climber from 3 years ago had been wearing a blue jacket, not red. The other climber had been wearing a green jacket, not gray. And when we'd lifted off, both climbers had waved. The injured one from the basket, the other from the ledge. This time, only the injured one had moved. The other had just stood there, staring up at the summit. I called Cole again. "Do you remember anything from the first rescue? Even vague impressions?" He was quiet for a long moment. "Maybe. It's weird, like trying to remember a dream. But I think, didn't the injured climber have a blue jacket?" "Yes," I said, feeling cold. "That's what I remember too. But the one we just rescued was wearing red." "I know. Nolan, how can we remember something that has no record of ever happening?" "I don't know, but we need to go back there." "To Cathedral Spires? Why?" "Because something's wrong with that place. Something that made us forget the first time, and now it's happening again." Cole didn't answer right away. "You think it's going to happen a third time?" "I don't know. But I need to see that ledge again. Without a rescue call, without the pressure. I need to understand what's happening there." We went that weekend. Chartered a civilian helicopter. Told them we were scouting photography locations. The pilot, a guy named Martinez, didn't ask questions. We flew out to Cathedral Spires on a Saturday afternoon. The weather was overcast, not ideal, but flyable. As we approached, I felt that same unsettling familiarity. "There," I pointed, "that ledge, below the highest spire." Martinez brought us into a hover. "You want to go down?" "Just get close. I want to look." We descended until we were about 20 feet above the ledge. It was empty. No climbers, no equipment. Just bare rock and patches of snow. Except for the marks. "You see that?" Cole said, pointing. "Scratches in the rock. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, carved into the stone face, not random, deliberate. Marks made by climbing equipment, anchors, carabiners. More marks than could possibly accumulate from normal climbing traffic." "How many people climb here?" I asked Martinez. He shrugged. "Cathedral Spires? Not many. It's technical, dangerous, maybe a dozen parties a year, if that." I counted the marks I could see. Easily over 100 distinct scratches, gouges, anchor points. "That's more than a dozen parties," Cole said quietly. We flew around the spire slowly, examining it from all angles. The marks covered the entire formation, concentrated most heavily around that one ledge. "Take us higher," I said. "I want to see the summit." Martinez climbed, spiraling up around the spire. The summit was a narrow point, barely 10 feet across, and carved into the rock at the very top were words. "We keep falling." The letters were crude but clear, chiseled deep into the stone. "What the hell?" Martinez muttered. "Can you get closer?" I asked. He shook his head. "Too dangerous. The downdrafts around these spires are unpredictable. We'd risk a crash." But I'd seen enough. Someone had carved those words at the summit of Cathedral Spires, hundreds of feet above the ledge where we'd rescued the injured climber. Twice. We flew back in silence. Martinez dropped us at the charter terminal and we stood there for a long moment, not speaking. "What do you want to do?" Cole finally asked. "I want to check something," I said. "Come with me." We drove to Denver Health Medical Center. I'd brought copies of my logbook entries from both rescues, 3 years ago and 3 days ago. At the hospital, I asked to speak with someone in records. A tired-looking administrator named Patricia Green met us in a small office. "I'm trying to locate admission records for 2 patients," I said, showing her the dates. Both would have come in by air ambulance, trauma patients, head injuries. She typed into her computer, searching. After a few minutes, she shook her head. "I'm not showing any admissions matching those descriptions on either date. Check the flight logs. Helicopter arrivals." More typing. "No helicopter arrivals on March 14th, 3 years ago. And that's odd. What? We show a helicopter arrival this past Thursday, but there's no associated patient admission. Just a notation that a flight landed and departed. No patient? According to this, the helicopter was empty." Cole and I looked at each other. "That's impossible," I said. "We brought in a critical patient. 25-year-old male, head trauma, climbing accident." Patricia's expression was professionally sympathetic. "Sir, I can only tell you what's in our system. If you'd like to file a formal inquiry—" "No," I said. "Thank you for your time." Outside, Cole leaned against the car. "This is insane. We both remember it. We have it in our logbooks, but there's no record anywhere else. Just like the first time," I said. "So, what happened to the patient?" I didn't have an answer. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about those words carved at the summit. "We keep falling, not I keep falling. We." I pulled up every resource I could find about cathedral spires. Climbing forums, accident reports, historical records. The formation had a reputation among serious climbers as being technically difficult and dangerous, but not impossibly so. Several successful summits were documented. But I also found something else. A climbing accident report from 15 years ago. 2 climbers attempting cathedral spires. One fell, one survived. The survivor's statement was included. We reached the summit around noon. My partner was setting up for our descent when he lost his footing. I tried to grab him, but couldn't reach in time. He fell approximately 300 feet, landing on a ledge below. I rappelled down, but he was already gone. I couldn't get the body off the mountain alone, so I had to leave him there and hike out for help. When rescue teams arrived 3 days later, they couldn't find any trace of him. No body, no equipment, nothing. The survivor's name was Michael Brennan. I found him through social media. He'd moved to Oregon, worked as a software engineer now, hadn't climbed in years. I called him. He was hesitant at first, but when I mentioned cathedral spires, something in his voice changed. "I don't talk about that," he said. "I understand. But I need to ask you something. Did you ever go back there?" A long pause. "No, never. Did you ever have dreams about it, or memories that don't quite fit?" Another pause. Longer this time. "How did you know that? What do you remember?" His voice dropped almost to a whisper. "Sometimes I remember it differently. In my nightmares, I'm the one who falls, not him. But I wake up and I'm alive, and I know that's not what happened. But the dreams are so vivid, so real, and sometimes during the day I'll have these flashes, memories of falling, of hitting the ledge, of lying there unable to move while my partner calls for help. But that's not what happened. I'm the one who survived, I'm sure of it." "Are you?" I asked gently. "I have to be," he said. "Because if I'm not, then what am I?" He hung up. I sat there holding the phone, my mind racing. Michael Brennan remembered falling, but he also remembered surviving. Two contradictory memories, both equally real to him. Just like I remembered flying that first rescue to Cathedral Spires 3 years ago, even though there was no record of it happening. The next day, I went back to my logbook. I looked at the entry from 3 years ago again, really studied it. My handwriting, definitely. But something was off about it. The pressure of the pen was lighter than my other entries, the spacing slightly different. Like someone had traced over words that were already there, or like I'd been half asleep when I wrote it. I held the page up to the light. There, barely visible beneath my writing, were other words, older, fainter, but unmistakable. Different date. Different year. I got a magnifying glass and looked closer. Under the entry from 3 years ago was another entry, from 6 years before that. And under that one, another, from 6 years before that. The same entry, written over and over, going back as far as I could trace. Cathedral Spires Rescue. Climber down. Head trauma. Every 6 years. Like clockwork. But according to my conscious memory, I'd only flown there twice. 3 years ago and 3 days ago. How many times had I actually flown that rescue? I called Cole. Check your logbook again. The Cathedral Spires entry from 3 years ago. Hold it up to the light. He called back 10 minutes later, his voice shaking. There are other entries underneath. The same entry, over and over. Jesus, Nolan, how many times have we done this? I don't know, but we need to stop it. How? By not flying there again. What if there's a real call, a real person who needs help? I didn't have an answer for that. But 2 weeks later, the call came. Amanda's voice over the radio. Nolan, we've got a climber down at Cathedral Spires. Partner reporting critical head trauma. My hands were shaking as I picked up the handset. Repeat those coordinates. She read them off. Exact match to the previous 2 rescues. Amanda, I need you to send someone else. What? Why? Just trust me. Send another crew. Nolan, you're the only pilot on duty right now. The nearest backup is 40 minutes out. If this person has a head injury, send them anyway. I can't fly this one. There was a long silence. Nolan, if you're not fit to fly, I need you to tell me officially so I can... I'm fit to fly, I just can't fly this particular mission. That's not how this works. We have a person in distress, you're the available pilot. You have to go. I looked at Cole. He'd heard the whole conversation through his headset. He was already shaking his head. We can't keep doing this, he said. We have to break the pattern. And if there's really someone up there who needs help, then they're already dead, Cole said quietly. They've been dead for years, maybe decades. We're not rescuing anyone, Nolan. We're just playing out the same scene over and over. Amanda's voice came back. Nolan, I need a response. Are you taking this call or not? I thought about Michael Brennan, unable to reconcile his 2 sets of memories. I thought about those words carved at the summit. We keep falling. I thought about how many times I might have flown to that ledge, rescued that same climber, brought him to a hospital where he disappeared from all records. How many versions of that same patient had I left on that ledge over the years? How many times had I forgotten? I'm taking it, I said. Cole stared at me. What? No. We agreed, if there's even a chance someone real needs help, I have to go. That's the job. He was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. Then I'm coming with you. We lifted off 10 minutes later. The flight to Cathedral Spires felt like flying through a recurring dream. Every landmark, every turn, every adjustment to the collective exactly as I'd done it before. Or as I would do it again. When we reached the coordinates, the ledge was there waiting. 2 figures, one standing, one down. But something was different this time. As we approached, both figures looked up at us, and the one lying down, the injured climber, raised a hand, waving. Not calling for help, just waving, like greeting an old friend. "Nolan," Cole's voice was tight. "That patient isn't injured." He was right. The figure on the ledge wasn't lying in a position of trauma or distress. He was sitting up, comfortable, just sitting there, waiting. "Should we abort?" Cole asked. I hovered there, 50 feet above the ledge, trying to decide. The 2 figures below just watched us, both perfectly still now, both staring up, and then, slowly, they both raised their hands, both waving. The same gesture, the same movement, like mirror images. I pulled up on the collective, climbing away from the ledge. "Dispatch, November 36 Charlie," I said into the radio. "We've reached the coordinates, but there's no emergency here. Both climbers appear uninjured and mobile. Appears to be a false alarm." Amanda's voice crackled back. "Copy that, Charlie. You're sure they don't need assistance?" I looked down at the ledge, now 100 feet below. The 2 figures were still there, still watching, still waving. "I'm sure," I said. Returning to base. As we flew away, I glanced back one last time. The figures were gone. The ledge was empty. Like they'd never been there at all. Back at the hangar, I pulled out my logbook and wrote, March 14th, current year. Cathedral spires. False alarm. No rescue performed. Cole watched me write it. "Do you think that breaks it, the pattern?" "I don't know, maybe. But I did know. Because when I held the page up to the light, I could already see the faint impression of future entries beneath my fresh ink. Same date, 6 years ahead, 12 years, 18 years. Cathedral spires rescue. Climber down, head trauma. The pattern wasn't broken, it was infinite. I'd fly there again. 6 years from now, I'd get the call. I'd respond. I'd rescue someone who'd disappear from all records. And then I'd forget, until the next time. Or maybe I wouldn't forget. Maybe this time I'd remember. Maybe that was worse. Knowing what was coming. Knowing I couldn't stop it. And having to fly that rescue anyway because when someone calls for help, you go. That's the job. Even if they're not real. Even if they've been calling for help for decades, maybe centuries. Even if responding means becoming part of the pattern yourself. Trapped in the same loop, flying the same rescue over and over. You still go. Cole put his hand on my shoulder. Next time, and I know there will be a next time, we'll figure out how to end it. I nodded, wanting to believe him. But I knew the truth. There was no ending this. Cathedral spires would keep calling. We would keep responding. The climber would keep falling, and we would keep trying to save him. We keep falling. Not just the climbers, all of us. Last night, I had a dream. I was standing on the ledge at Cathedral Spires, looking up at the summit, and carved into the rock, in letters I somehow knew were written in my own handwriting, were new words beneath the old ones. We keep falling, and they keep coming. I woke up and checked my logbook. The next entry was already there, faint but visible. 6 years from now. Same date, same location, same rescue. I'll fly 100 times more until I can't remember which time is real and which times I've already forgotten. Until I'm standing on that ledge myself, looking up at the helicopter, raising my hand, waving, waiting for someone to try to save me, knowing they'll fail, knowing they'll forget, knowing they'll come back anyway, because that's what we do. We keep falling, and they keep coming. My name is Jack Winters. I've been flying search and rescue in the Colorado Rockies for 13 years. I've seen broken bodies impossible survivals, and more death than I care to count. But the call that keeps me awake at night wasn't dramatic. There was no storm, no crash, no blood. It was the quietest mission I've ever flown. That's what makes it worse. It was a Tuesday in late September, one of those perfect autumn days where the aspens are turning gold and the sky is so blue it almost hurts to look at. I was scheduled for a routine supply run to the weather station on Mount Lincoln. Medical supplies, food, equipment. Simple. I'd done it a dozen times before. My usual flight medic called in sick that morning, so they paired me with someone from the standby rotation. His name was Vincent. I didn't catch his last name and didn't think to ask. Mid-40s, quiet, professional. He loaded the supplies without small talk. Just efficient movements and nods. We lifted off at 10 a.m. exactly. The helicopter, November 27 Romeo, ran perfectly. Everything was textbook. Clean takeoff, smooth cruise, good weather. The kind of flight where you can almost forget you're working. Vincent sat in the right seat, watching the landscape pass below. He didn't speak, didn't ask questions, didn't make conversation. Some medics are like that, focused, interior. I didn't mind. The silence was comfortable. 40 minutes into the flight, I noticed something odd. The GPS was showing our route correctly, all the waypoints lined up, but the terrain below didn't quite match what I expected. Nothing dramatic, just small differences. A ridge that seemed slightly higher than I remembered. A valley a bit narrower, the kind of thing you might chalk up to angle or lighting. "You flown to Lincoln before?" I asked Vincent. He turned to look at me. His eyes were gray, very pale. "No?" "It's pretty straightforward. We'll drop off at the station, they'll unload. We'll be home in time for lunch." He nodded and turned back to the window. I checked the instruments again. Everything nominal. Fuel good, engine temps perfect, altitude holding steady at 11,000 feet. But that feeling of wrongness was growing. Not anxiety exactly, more like déjà vu in reverse. The sense that something familiar was becoming strange. "You been with mountain rescue long?" I asked, trying to shake the feeling through conversation. "No," Vincent said. "Where'd you work before?" He was quiet for a moment. "Different places." Not unfriendly, just minimal. I let it drop. We flew on. Below us, the mountains rolled past in their endless variation of rock and forest and snow. I'd flown over this terrain hundreds of times, knew it like some people know city streets. But today it looked different. Subtly wrong, there, that peak to the left. I knew that peak, Cathedral Rock, distinctive triple summit. But the middle spire looked taller than I remembered. Or was it? Maybe I was just seeing it from a different angle. I checked the GPS again, right on course. "Ever get that feeling like you've done something before?" I asked. "Like déjà vu?" Vincent looked at me again with those pale gray eyes. "Yes. I'm having it now. Everything feels familiar but not quite right." "Maybe you have done this before," he said. "I have. Like I said, I've flown this route a dozen times. Maybe more than that." I glanced at him. He was still looking at me, his expression neutral. "What do you mean?" "People forget things," Vincent said. "They think they remember, but memory is unreliable." It was the longest thing he'd said since we'd taken off. I wanted to ask him to elaborate, but something stopped me. Some instinct that told me I didn't want to know what he meant. We flew in silence for another 10 minutes. The wrongness kept building. Small things, accumulating. The clouds weren't quite the right shape. The shadows fell at angles that didn't match the sun. The radio chatter from other aircraft sounded distant and distorted, like signals from very far away. and Vincent sat perfectly still, watching out the window, his hands folded in his lap. "Lincoln Station should be coming up," I said, more to break the silence than anything. "Just over this ridge." We cleared the ridge. The weather station was there, exactly where it should be. White buildings, radio antenna, the landing pad with its painted circle. But there were no people. Usually when we approached, the station crew would come out to meet us. They'd wave, help unload, exchange pleasantries. This time, the station looked deserted. No movement, no vehicles, no signs of life. "That's odd," I said, bringing the helicopter into a hover over the landing pad. They knew we were coming. Vincent didn't respond. I sat down smoothly and reduced the throttle to idle, leaving the engine running. "I'll check inside, see if they're around. You start unloading?" Vincent nodded. I climbed out and walked toward the main building. The door was unlocked, which was normal. Inside, everything looked ordinary. Equipment running, lights on, coffee pot still warm on the burner. But no people. "Hello?" I called out. "Anybody here?" My voice echoed in the empty hallway. I walked through the station, checking the common room, the lab, the sleeping quarters. Everything was neat, organized, lived in, but nobody was there. I went back outside. Vincent had unloaded about half the supplies and was stacking boxes on the landing pad with mechanical efficiency. "The station's empty," I said. "No one's here." He looked up at me. "Are you sure?" I checked everywhere. Maybe they're outside, doing field work. It was possible, but unlikely. They knew we were coming. Someone should have been here. I pulled out my radio and tried to raise the station on their frequency. Static. I tried dispatch. More static, but faint enough that I could almost make out words underneath. "My radio's acting up," I said. "Can you try yours?" Vincent reached into his vest and pulled out a handset. He keyed the mic and spoke. "Weather Station Lincoln, this is Mountain Rescue Supply Flight. Please respond." Nothing but hiss. "Dispatch, this is November 27 Romeo. We're on station at Lincoln, but the facility appears unmanned. Please advise." The static changed pitch slightly, a subtle shift that might have been a response or might have been nothing. Vincent lowered the radio. "No contact. We should finish unloading and head back," I said. "Report it when we're in better range." We worked together in silence, moving the remaining supplies into the station's storage room. The whole time I kept listening for sounds of the crew returning, footsteps or voices or vehicles. But there was only the wind and the distant hum of the helicopter. When we finished, I did one more walkthrough of the station. I don't know what I was looking for. Some clue about where everyone had gone or why. In the common room, I noticed a whiteboard on the wall. It had a calendar grid with various dates and assignments marked. Today's date had a single word written next to it. Flight, that was all. Just that one word in neat block letters. I stared at it for a long moment, feeling that wrongness intensify. Why would they write flight on today's date? They had flights every week. It wasn't notable enough to mark specially, unless it meant something else. I left the station and walked back to the helicopter. Vincent was already in the right seat, buckled in, waiting. "Ready?" he asked. "Yeah, let's get out of here." I climbed in and began the startup sequence. The engine spooled up normally, all gauges green. I pulled pitch and we lifted off, climbing away from the empty station. As we gained altitude, I looked back. The buildings grew smaller, the landing pad shrinking to a white circle against the mountain. And then I saw them, 4 figures standing at the edge of the clearing. They hadn't been there when we landed. I was certain of it. "Vincent, look," I said, pointing. But when I looked again, there was nothing. just empty ground and rocks. "What did you see?" Vincent asked. I thought, never mind, probably just shadows. We flew back the way we'd come, following the GPS route, but the terrain below still looked wrong. More than before. The valleys were too deep, the peaks too sharp. The shadows were all wrong for the angle of the sun. "Vincent, does the landscape look strange to you?" He studied the ground below for a moment. "It looks like mountains." "I know, but something's off. The proportions, or the colors, or... I don't know. Memory is unreliable," he said again. "You think you remember what things look like, but you're wrong more often than you realize." I wanted to argue, but couldn't find the words. Was he right? Was I just remembering wrong? We flew for what should have been about 40 minutes, but when I checked the clock, only 15 minutes had passed. That couldn't be right. I'd been watching the landmarks. We should be much closer to base. I checked the GPS. It showed we'd traveled the correct distance, but the time didn't match. "My chronometer might be acting up," I said. Vincent didn't respond. I focused on flying, trying to ignore the accumulating strangeness. The radio static had gotten louder, a constant hiss that rose and fell like breathing. The instruments all read normally, but I found myself double-checking them, not quite trusting what they showed. The helicopter felt different too. Heavier, or lighter, or something else I couldn't quite identify. The controls responded normally, but there was a lag, like flying through something thicker than air. "How long have you been a paramedic?" I asked, needing to hear a human voice, even if it was just Vincent's minimal responses. "A while." "What made you get into rescue work?" He turned those pale gray eyes on me. Someone had to. "That's a strange answer." "Is it?" I didn't know how to respond to that. We flew in silence. Below us, I recognized a landmark. Devil's Thumb, a distinctive rock formation. We were getting close to home, but something was wrong with it. The shape was right, the location was right, but it looked older somehow, more weathered. Like I was seeing it from far in the future, after years of erosion had changed its face. "Vincent, do you see Devil's Thumb down there? Does it look normal to you?" He looked down. "It looks like a rock. But does it look right, the same as always? I've never seen it before today." "Right, sorry, I forgot." But had I forgotten? Or had I known all along that Vincent had never seen it? Would never see it except for this one flight? My thoughts were getting confused. I shook my head, trying to clear it. The GPS showed we were 10 minutes from base. The fuel gauge showed plenty of reserve. Everything was fine. This was a routine flight. Nothing was wrong. Except everything was wrong, and I knew it. Had known it from the moment we took off, had always known it. "Vincent, can I ask you something?" "Yes. Are you real?" He looked at me for a long moment. His expression didn't change. "Are you?" I didn't have an answer. We flew on. The base should have been visible by now, but I couldn't see it. Just more mountains, stretching out endlessly in all directions. The GPS insisted we were nearly there, but my eyes showed only wilderness. "I don't understand what's happening," I said. "You're flying," Vincent said calmly. "That's what's happening. But we should be there by now. We should see the base. Maybe you're looking in the wrong place." I scanned the horizon. Nothing but peaks and valleys and that wrong-colored sky. And then I saw it. Not the base. Something else. A helicopter, identical to mine, flying parallel to us about a mile away. Same model, same paint scheme, same registration number. November 27 Romeo. My helicopter. "Vincent, do you see that?" "See what?" "That helicopter. It's us. It's our helicopter." He looked where I was pointing. "I don't see anything." But it was there. I could see it clearly. And in the cockpit I could see two figures, a pilot and a passenger. The pilot turned to look at me. It was my face. I jerked my eyes away, my heart hammering. This isn't real. This can't be real. "What's real?" Vincent asked, his voice perfectly calm. I looked back. The other helicopter was gone. Had it ever been there? "I need to land," I said. "I need to get on the ground. There's nowhere to land here." He was right. We were over heavy forest now, no clearings visible. But I couldn't keep flying. Something was very wrong, and I needed to stop, needed to think. I started a descent anyway, looking for any gap in the trees large enough for the helicopter. "That's not safe," Vincent observed. "I know. You might crash." "I know. Is that what you want?" I didn't answer. Was it? Did I want to crash? To end this wrongness through impact and fire and the sudden clarity of destruction? No. No. I wanted to land safely and figure out what was happening. I wanted to be home, on solid ground, with other people who could confirm that reality was still real. I spotted a small clearing and aimed for it. The approach was tight, barely enough room, but I'd made harder landings. The skids touched down. Everything stopped. Not just the helicopter, everything. The rotors froze mid-rotation. The instrument needles stopped moving. The wind stopped blowing. Complete silence. Complete stillness. Vincent turned to look at me. His pale gray eyes were very clear. "This is where it ends," he said. "Where what ends?" "The flight, the loop, this version of it." I wanted to unbuckle, to get out, to run, but I couldn't move. My hands wouldn't respond, my legs were frozen. "What's happening to me?" I asked, and my voice sounded very far away. "You're remembering," Vincent said. "Finally." "Remembering what?" "The crash. 13 years ago, the first supply run you ever flew to Lincoln Station." No, that wasn't right. I'd flown hundreds of missions in 13 years. I'd never crashed. "You crashed in the trees," Vincent continued, his voice gentle now, almost kind. "Engine failure. You tried to auto-rotate but couldn't find a clearing in time. The helicopter rolled when it hit. The impact broke your neck. You died instantly." "No," I said, "that's not true. I'm alive. I'm here." "You're here," Vincent agreed. "But you're not alive. You've been flying the same route for 13 years, trying to complete it, trying to land safely, but you always crash, and then you start over, and you don't remember the crashes, only the feeling that something's wrong. Who are you?" "I'm what comes after," Vincent said. "I'm here to help you understand, to help you stop." The frozen rotors above us began to move again, but backward, unwinding. The instruments started running in reverse. The sun traveled backward across the sky. "I don't want to stop," I said. "I want to keep flying." "I know. That's why you're still here, because you love it too much to let go. But Jack, it's time. You've flown this route enough." The helicopter was lifting off, rising backward from the clearing. We were ascending through the trees, time reversing. "What happens if I stop?" I asked. "You move on. You let go. You stop being trapped in this moment. And what's after that?" Vincent smiled for the first time. "I don't know. I only come for the endings. What happens next is yours to discover." We were high above the trees now, flying backward toward the mountain station. I could see it ahead or behind, time having lost its meaning. "I don't remember crashing," I said. "You will. When you're ready to remember, you'll see it clearly. The moment the engine quit, the desperate search for a landing site, the trees rushing up, and then the impact, and the silence. Like this silence? Exactly like this. I looked at the instruments. They were running forward again now, time having made up its mind. We were approaching the station. I could see it below, the white buildings, the landing pad. The empty landing pad where 4 figures stood, watching us descend. "Who are they?" I asked. "The other crew. The ones who died in the crash with you. They've been waiting." "Waiting for what?" "For you to finish. You're the last one, Jack. The others moved on years ago. You're the only one still flying." I brought the helicopter into a hover over the pad. The 4 figures looked up at us. I recognized them now. My old crew from 13 years ago. Travis, my flight medic. Sarah, our dispatcher. Mike and Jessica, the weather station staff who'd been on board for a ride back to base. They were smiling. "I can't land," I said. "If I land, it ends." "It ends either way," Vincent said. "You can land and move on, or you can keep flying this route forever, forgetting and remembering and forgetting again. But Jack, don't you want to rest?" I did. God, I was so tired. 13 years of flying the same mission, feeling the same wrongness, never understanding why. I started my descent. The skids touched the pad gently, perfectly. My best landing ever. Travis stepped forward and opened my door. His hand was warm when he helped me out. "Took you long enough," he said, grinning. "I forgot," I said. "I kept forgetting." "We know. That's okay. You're here now." I looked back at the helicopter. Vincent was gone. The right seat was empty. Maybe he'd never been there at all. Maybe I'd been flying alone this whole time, talking to the silence. "What do we do now?" I asked. Sarah pointed toward the station building. The door was open, warm light spilling out. "We go inside," she said. "We've been waiting to show you something." I walked with them toward the door. Each step felt lighter than the last, like gravity was releasing its hold. At the threshold, I stopped and looked back at the helicopter one last time. November 27 Romeo, sitting on the pad, rotors still. "Will someone else fly it?" I asked. "Someone already is," Mike said. "Someone's always flying it, but that's not your concern anymore." I stepped inside. The door closed behind me. And I woke up, not in the station, in a hospital bed, with machines beeping and tubes in my arms and a nurse checking my vitals. "Welcome back," she said. "You've been in a coma for 3 weeks. Helicopter crash. They didn't think you'd make it." I stared at her, my mind reeling. 3 weeks? But I was flying for 13 years. She smiled gently. "The brain does strange things when it's healing. You've been dreaming." It felt so real. They always do. Over the next few days, they told me what happened. Engine failure during a routine supply run to Mount Lincoln. I tried to auto-rotate into a clearing but hit trees on the approach. The helicopter rolled. My crew chief, Travis, died on impact. I'd been pulled from the wreckage with severe head trauma. I'd been in a coma for 3 weeks, dreaming of flying the same mission over and over, dreaming of Vincent, dreaming of the empty station and the 4 figures and the quiet ending. It was just a dream, they said. Trauma-induced, the mind's way of processing the crash. It meant nothing. I wanted to believe them. I was discharged after 2 months. Physical therapy, psychological counseling, evaluation for return to flight status, the works. I passed everything. They cleared me to fly again, but I couldn't do it. Every time I climbed into a helicopter, I felt that wrongness, that sense that something wasn't real, that I was still dreaming, still trapped in the loop. I resigned from mountain rescue. I moved to Nebraska, as far from the mountains as I could get. Took a job as a flight instructor at a small regional airport. Cessnas and Pipers, pattern work and touch and goes, safe, predictable, real. I've been here for 6 months now. I don't dream about flying anymore. But sometimes, late at night, I hear helicopter rotors in the distance, and I wonder if I'm really in Nebraska, really awake, really alive. Or if I'm still on that mountain, still in that loop, still trying to land. Vincent said I moved on. But how would I know? If I'm still dreaming, still trapped, would it feel any different than this? Would I remember the crash? Or would I just have the vague sense that something's wrong? The feeling that reality isn't quite real? Last week, I got a letter. No return address. Inside was a single photograph. It showed a helicopter landing at a weather station. November 27 Romeo. In the pilot's seat, I could just make out a figure. It looked like me. On the back of the photo, in handwriting I didn't recognize, was a single question. Are you sure you woke up? I burned the letter, I burned the photo. I went to work the next day and flew 3 students through their lesson plans. Pattern work, touch and goes, everything normal, everything real. But I kept the ashes, put them in an envelope, locked them in my desk drawer. Because I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I woke up or if I'm still flying that route, still trying to land, still forgetting and remembering and forgetting again. Maybe I'll never be sure. Maybe that's the real trap, not being stuck in a loop, but never knowing if you've escaped it. Maybe I'm in Nebraska, maybe I'm in a coma, maybe I'm dead, and this is what comes after. Or maybe I'm still in that helicopter, with Vincent in the right seat, flying toward a mountain station that's always just ahead, always just out of reach. The flight that never ends, the landing that never comes, the quiet one. Last night, I dreamed I was flying again. The same route, the same wrongness, and in the right seat was Vincent, with his pale gray eyes, watching me. "Ready to try again?" he asked. I woke up in my bed in Nebraska, at least I think I did. But I'm not sure. I'm never sure anymore, and that's worse than any crash could ever be.